Hi, people. Good evening, and welcome to yet another edition of InsightView series, the online webinar of the Advertising Club of Madras. My name is RmKV, and I'm a past president, and I also on the executive committee right now. I'm standing in for President Parle Biscuits who has had to go for a doctor's appointment. So, welcome everybody who have taken time to log in. I hope all of you have cast your votes and sitting right here now, wanting to listen to some, great content from Subramaniam, today's speaker. So, Subbu, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and taking time off to do this for us. And I'm sure the participants are also very eager to listen to, your point of view on strategic planning and why is it more relevant, especially in the digital era. I now request Suraj to give a brief introduction about Subbu and then hand it over to Subbu to take things forward. Thank you and welcome, guys, once again. Sit back and enjoy the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anbu. Thank you, Subbu, once again for taking the time out, and a very good evening to all of you. Appreciated that many of you amongst the election time are also taking this the 12th InsightView series session seriously to learn and gain knowledge. And today we're in for a very interesting session. I'm Suraj Salim, the Secretary of the Advertising Club of Madras and co-founder of Digitally Inspired Media. Let me quickly introduce Subbu to all of you. It's a very interesting person. You'll understand why. A very perceptive person who has a unique outlook to most situations, be it business or life. Subramaniam stepped into the world of advertising, more specifically media planning, in the year 1987. As a disciplinarian, Subbu has his days planned out before him like clockwork. He's a keen reader and optimist with a love for numbers and never shies away from an opportunity to learn something new. His initial media planning stint was at Mumbai, where he worked with reputable agencies like Clarion Advertising Services, Contract Advertising and Everest Advertising. He then moved to Bengaluru, where he worked at Mudra Communications. The 2 decades of agency life gave him the opportunity to work on several popular brands from renowned organizations such as TTK Prestige, Ujala, XO, Parle Biscuits and Confectionery, Complan, Paragon Footwear, Van Heusen, Peter England, Alan Solly, Louis Philippe, RmKV Silks, and several others. He was a part of RmKV India's leadership transformation initiatives for corporates. Currently, he's a partner at Learn at Spring LLP, a training unit that conducts sessions and workshops for aspiring planners and marketeers. These are a few memorable achievements of Subbu. Conducted a 2-week media planning course at Nairobi, Kenya, for a group of 30 to 35 professionals working with the SCAN group, that's part of the WPP group company. He's trained over 200 professionals spread across leading media houses and research organizations like Times of India, Dinamalar, TAM, The Hindu, Enad, Sandesh, and Raj TV, etc. He has facilitated several RmKV mindset change workshops for top leadership across leading organizations from Mumbai, Bangalore, and Chennai. Conducted a workshop on communication planning for the brand team of Commercial Bank in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Was a part of the MRUC IRS team in South India. He's launched Spring in 2008 at Bangalore to train media planning aspirants within the industry. Apart from having an MBA degree in marketing from SP Jain Institute of Management, Mumbai, Subbu is a graduate in statistics. He believes that well begun is half done. The key to the success of any communication effort is planning. Being customer-centric is the key for a brand to survive and succeed, more so in today's challenging environment. And finally, real success in our life is determined by our way of being. So thank you, Subbu, and over to you.
Thank you, Suraj, and thank you, Anbu. I think that was quite a lofty introduction. I didn't realize that what I would be sharing with you all would be shared so detailed in such a detailed manner. Thank you so much, Suraj. And also special thanks to Krishnan, my dear friend Krishnan, who also sort of in a way helped this particular meeting to happen. So I think it's I would say a very special moment for me to address I think all the participants thanks to the forum provided by at Club Madras. Yeah, so I'll just quickly dive into a presentation because I don't want to hold too much of your time. Hope, I think Anbu asked, hope you all have voted. And this is a time that we should exercise our franchise. And this is one, I would say, time when we get a chance to, I would say, be a part of the nation building exercise, in our own way. So I hope all of you have also exercised your franchise today. And on the lighter vein, it also gives us a chance to cheer or criticize a government or an MP during the year, So we get the right only when we vote. So we should not criticize or comment otherwise. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, friends. So I'll just dive into the presentation without holding you all further back on this. Okay. Is the screen visible to everyone? I suppose in case it isn't, please let me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is visible. So yeah.
Right. So as the topic says, the relevance of strategic planning, and the question that I was asking myself, and which I thought was possibly would share my thoughts on it, is it more relevant in today's digital world? And somewhere along the answer is obviously it is relevant, and if so, why? Then the question is something which we need to understand and get into a deeper understanding as to why is strategic planning more important in today's context. And for that, I think we need to just understand the scenario in which we are currently operating. Yeah. So if you look at the scenario, we are looking at the brand scenario today. So we need to understand what's the brand scenario today. Next, we need to understand what's today's consumer and how is today's consumer different from the consumer of yesteryears. And thirdly, how is the media scenario today, and how is the evolution has happened as far as media is concerned. So it's very important to understand brand, consumer, and media. And the moment we understand, we are able to sort of understand and sort of get the link between all the three of them, we are then able to understand why we are looking at the importance of strategic planning. Yeah. So first, let's sort of understand and dwell into the scenario today, just so that we get a background against which we're going to talk and have this conversation. Because it's important to understand what is the scenario, what's the evolving situation, what is the current scenario that is there as far as brand is concerned, consumer is concerned, and media is concerned. So we'll start with brand first. So what lies at the core of this question? The core of this question, core of any question for that matter, in my opinion, as I would say, custodians of communication, or you may be coming from fields where you are the brand custodians. It's very important for us to understand we all are, end of the day, whether I'm working in an agency or whether I'm working in an organization which is a marketing organization, we are all custodians of brand. So the core or the crux of everything boils down to the relevance and role of brands. So role and relevance of brands is very, very important for us to understand. And unless we are able to appreciate the role and relevance of brands, the rest, all that we do it's like, the foundation is not that good. So unless we have this foundation of understanding the role and relevance of brands, and if that is in place, is when the rest of the structure comes up very nicely. So let's understand what's the brand scenario today. So if you look at a brand scenario today, there's a plethora of brands. So if you look at almost every category or every segment, we're looking at plethora of brands vying for customer attention. Yeah. And we are seeing this not only as, I would say, as people who are custodians of communication or brand, also as end consumers. Yeah. So we see this happening constantly. The next is today's world is totally driven by technology, and use of technology is much higher than at any point in time earlier. And I think this line doesn't need any explanation. We all are experiencing it day in, day out. The next is, this is an era of convergence. And it's very essential to understand this, because I think a lot of us are so much involved into it and so easily, actually experiencing this, that we don't even realize that there was an era when this convergence was not happening. So today, you take a very simple thing that you go out to buy anything, you have the option of going to a physical store or a digital store. It starts at a very, very basic level. That convenience has come in purely because of convergence. And this is because today you have, I would say, end servicing points, which could be physical or it could be digital in nature. So the era of convergence is clearly saying that, and at the end of the day, it's not that there's less communication between the physical and the digital store. So there are times when you could possibly place an order in a physical store and get a delivery through a digital delivery, or you could do it in a digital place. You could do your homework, place all your requirements, and go and collect it from a physical store. So there are a lot of these cross connections happening, very clearly indicating that I think there is a huge convergence of these happening. So you will have looked at the multiple distribution points or exit points, for a customer also are going up. Power has shifted. Now, this is very important for us to understand. I think this is something which has happened so subtly in India that I think we wouldn't have even realized. The power shifted to customer who's increasingly, there are two varies here, vary of marketing communication. Meaning, say earlier you were there's I would say a barrage of communication is coming to us, and I think even now that's happening. So in a way, the consumer has now got to be very, very clear and sift through all this communication, and also be wary of fraudulent communication or misleading communication that's also happening. So it's very important for the customer to understand and clearly sift through all the marketing communication that's happening. So the power is clearly the consumer end, because it's no longer can the manufacturer say that these are things that I'll just in a way impose on the consumer, and the consumer is in a way liable to sort of fall in line or understand what I'm saying. No, certainly the consumer has choice today, has his own ways and methods of sifting through information and coming to a conclusion. Customer today tend to follow the lead of their peers when deciding brands to choose. And this is something which is, I would say, was there in a very dormant fashion earlier. Earlier also, you bought a house, or you bought a car, or you bought any of the white goods, you used to always consult and talk to your neighbor. But today that power has gone up immensely. So if you look at anything, and you get recommendations not only for known sources, also for unknown sources. Just take the example of us going or any family is planning to go on a holiday, and you want to go to a particular place. For suppose you're going to Goa, and you're saying that I want to know which are the good hotels in Goa, and you sort of identify a particular hotel, and there are multiple reviews which are available for you to read. And who writes these reviews are not people whom you and I know personally. These are people who have experienced it and who feel the need to share the experience, good or bad. So in a way, a lot of people, they form their opinion about staying at a place or buying a particular thing based on this particular feedback from people, from sources that they don't even know or haven't met. So to that extent, there's a risk element, because sometimes these sources could, in a way, mislead you on a particular decision making. But that's where you need to look at larger number of sample of people, larger number of responses for you to come to a fairly balanced, I would say, conclusion. So today, if you look at what we're seeing in this slide here is the brand has moved from vying for customer attention to the fact that you have to engage with customers. So I think almost that spectrum is very clear, and technology is enabling that very beautifully. So if you were to look at the scenario in such a scenario, so what are the emerging trends that one would look at? So one is just to give a feel, I'm just trying to sort of walk you through this so that you are able to appreciate what I said just now. So we look at emerging trends, we look at in brands itself, we had good old brands which were launched and packaged and available at certain points in time. But there are different brands. Now, if you look at brands which are based on sharing economy, brands which are based on the now economy, brands which are omni-channel integration, as I said, I talked about this already, content marketing and social CRM. I'm sure each one of you are able to give me example of a sharing economy. Yeah, sharing economy. Anybody has an idea about what is sharing economy? Okay, I'll just sort of share the definition for you so that you can understand this. So sharing economy, the most potent distribution concept is peer-to-peer distribution. And they provide easy access to products and services not owned by them, but by the customers. So if you look at this definition very clearly, one can quickly understand we are all using the shared economy almost on a regular basis. For instance, if you were to look at Ola or Uber, are services which come under this. So in reality, we look at the cab driver or the person who is not actually owning it. Somebody else is owning it. He's sort of giving that particular service available. End consumer is interacting with the company based on a service that is being provided by someone else. So they provide customers easy access to products and services not owned by them, but by other customers. So in a way, you have to, today there are many people who are even thinking whether do I need to buy a car, purely because I have access to this service already available. So all that I have to do is just take the app and put my destination, and I'm sort of reached out to the particular destination. Sharing economy, this is something which didn't exist many years back. So new brands, new service, new options coming up, and this is Uber is just one of them. There are multiple products categories, even dresses being available for rent are all amazing sharing economy kind of examples. As far as the now economy is concerned, I think I don't think anybody in this group would be there who wouldn't have used this. We are all used to that. The moment we are hungry and we don't have food at home, all that we do is get a Swiggy or a Zomato or any other app, and it provides instant gratification. So I think there are a lot of products which are providing instant gratification. These are the now economy. So it's almost like you get an instantaneous delivery. You have even groceries which are instantaneously delivered. So I think there are lots of now options coming up, which all I would say are evolution. These are all brands which have come into vogue thanks to all the I would say tremendous usage of technology, tremendous usage and penetration of technology, smartphones. All this has actually been enabled. So here the speed of delivery is often as important as the products and services themselves. So each one will have a characteristic. For instance, if you look at the sharing economy, the kind of I would say service that you get, kind of I would say experience that you have will decide your future usage of that. So suppose you have a experience where every time you order a cab through Uber or Ola or one of the services, and if they are not finding it pleasant, then you are obviously going to have a particular opinion. So similarly here, every time you order, and are you going to get the right kind of food or right kind of products that you ordered and right time? I think so a lot of this experience starts playing a role. Economy based on customer interactions to preferred channels. I already talked about it. You can look at a digital or a physical store or a combo of that. Yeah. Then there are approaches where the creating, curating, distributing, and amplifying content is done, where you are looking at new brands which are built through these kind of amplifying content. Obviously, we've just sort of been through we're in the midst of the election season. So here is where a great example, you can see creating, curating, distributing, amplifying content, which are pro or against a particular disposition is easily sort of amplified. Content that is interesting and relevant, used to clearly define audiences. So all this is very prevalent. And finally, the social CRM. Here, I think it's in a way you create something which will trigger a conversation. So you actually have people to you create a particular opportunity for people to write into you with queries and with inquiries. So in a way, the whole thing is triggered with the end consumer rather than the manufacturer or the marketer triggering it. So that's a big difference that's happening. And this is something which again has the scope and capability to get scaled up across categories. So that's the brand scenario that we're looking at. So in such a scenario, we are moving to the media scenario. So what are the big changes that are happening in the media scenario? So if you look at media types have undergone striking changes that mirror the evolution of technology. Yeah, and what are the examples? Like for example, this is something which you have seen. We all have, at least my era, we all have been exposed to immense amount of newspapers, magazines, television, radio, and whatnot. But today, how is it consumed? The media does exist. Television does exist, but it is consumed in a very different fashion. It's consumed on TV, laptop, or mobile. And there are competitions within that also. Like there's OTT which has come, which is like almost like the content is decided by the end user. Then newspapers, again, can be accessed physically or through digital devices. Yeah. Then you have outdoor, which is again moving towards, clearly was more towards digital messaging. All the LCD screens that you see when you go for watching a movie are clearly examples of outdoor. These changes have again become make the historical ways of approaching media obsolete. So what happens is sometimes we are so caught up with, okay, this is a TV plan, this is how we're going to look at it, and this is what they will watch it. So I think a lot of it has changed. For example, if you look at even the television plan, so you do create a television plan and assuming that somebody watches a particular serial at a particular point in time. But what happens is today we have the option of watching those recorded, I would say, episodes on YouTube, watching it, recording it at home, and watching it subsequently So there are so many options that, in a way, the captivity of their audience for a particular time period is completely redefined. So I could spare the time. So I have a very important evening appointment, but I don't want to miss my serial today. I can watch it late in the night when I come back, but I can continue to have my appointment. So I think in a way, it frees away your time on consuming that particular media. So that's something which we need to understand, how people consume this media. And that's very, very essential, that when you're looking at a brand and a consumer and a media interaction, you need to understand how this interaction happens. So new media options are constantly emerging. As I talked about, OTT is one of them. Of course, Insta, YouTube, all these are other options that have come up. And they are weaning away consumer time. That's very important to understand, that the amount of time spent on a particular standard media like print or TV or radio are all changing. And even the experience on some media is changing. For example, if you look at cinema today, the cinema experience is far different than what it was many years back. So I think all this go to contribute to make the entire scenario very exciting, at the same time very challenging. Yeah. So in such a scenario, how do you get to plan? So we've seen that there's a plethora of brands, and the way people interact with brands is very different. Customers are becoming more and more savvy, and we are having a media scenario where there's a constant evolution of existing media and constant introduction of new media. So what are the brand challenges here? Connecting and engaging with the right consumer is challenging but essential. I think none of us in this particular group who are engaged with brands can ever escape not interacting or engaging with the consumer. Yeah. And yet we know that consumer is a very, very slippery consumer today, very difficult consumer to catch. So how should a consumer accept and treat it as a brand and not just another product or service, or another is another big challenge for a brand. Now, this is a very important point. I think I would like to all of you to appreciate this point, because this whole exercise of brand building itself is getting diluted. I think we look at more and more brands or I would say so-called branding is happening only for valuation. Now that is a very, very dangerous trend, because then you are not investing it with the right intent. Whereas if you look at some brands which have invested considerable amount of money over the years, large brands have built brands on certain values and virtues of their or the differentiators of their brand, and that has stood the test of time, has been modified and so on. But there is I would say crux on which it sort of is resting. But the moment you're looking at brands being built only with the aim of quickly ramping up the valuation or ramping up its visibility so that it gets taken over, I think it's a very different brand building exercise you're talking about. And there is also a challenge of a lot of this. There are so many of them. There's so many of me too's of it, because purely because you got funds, you sort of take somebody's money and launch a brand. But what is the differentiation? The consumer starts seeing you as a commodity. So that entire journey from being a commodity to a brand gets lost out unless the brand actually invests very much in, building clear differentiators which will differentiate this particular brand, this particular product, and be qualified to be called as a brand. So how do we overcome these challenges? And I was obviously I had these slides written, but I just thought about that what is the scenario we're looking at? We're looking at a chaos that is prevailing, the chaos from a brand perspective, customer perspective, and media perspective. And yet there is an order in it. So the idea is that how do we sort of get that order in place? And that's when I came across this quote, which I thought was very powerful and very helpful, which actually says that the controlled chaos is one way to get creativity. The intensity of it, the physical rush, the intimacy created the kind of dialogue that leads to synergy. And Richard Holbrooke's this particular, I would say, quote I found was very, very impactful, very relevant, very, very thought-provoking. If you were to look at how do you find a way through the chaos, and the controlled chaos is one way to get to creativity, is a very powerful line. So in a way, what you're doing is you're just channelizing the energy that is already available through the chaos. So the energy that's already available through the chaos is channelized in a more creative fashion. And how do you do that? You do that through focused process of communication. So one important element, and that's what I would say is the crux of our working, or should be the crux of our working, is that how how planned and well executed is our plans going to be, our thinking going to be. Yeah. So let's understand what's communication. So transmission of information. So very simple put that, we have some attributes of the brand, virtues of the brand, we got to communicate to the consumer. Yeah? So it's a simple exercise. So transmission of information. Yeah. And what is the role of this particular communication we're looking at? Invariably, the role of communication in brand building is to solve the brand marketing challenge or objectives by addressing consumer needs or wants. So it's very important that you have a brand which has got its own goals or objectives or challenges. And here is a consumer who has a particular requirement. How do you get this bridge going? How do you get this communication, two-way communication going is what the exercise for, I would say, a role of communication. So what are the, I would say, fundamental elements that one want to look at? Two fundamental elements that we need to keep in mind when you're looking at communication. And I'm going to focus on only one of them. The other one, I think you will have other erudite speakers who can speak very well on that. So the first one is content. What the brand communicates, the message. Yeah. And the second is the contact. How it connects with the consumer or the end user, which is a medium. And I'll quickly go through content. I'm not going to spend too much time on content. I'm going to spend more time on contact because media is all about getting the right contact. So what is the desired brand message? So typically, we would always look for a big idea or a differentiator. So unless we have a big idea or a differentiator, like as I said, like being a Me Too product or fighting with someone just based on price or I would say a particular attribute which can be easily replaced by someone, is always a risky proposition for a brand. So unless a strong differentiator, it's always going to be risky. So how do you get this big idea? So what is a big idea? And how do you get this pretty big idea? So it requires a certain amount of, I would say, research or understanding of the category and how the consumer is consuming and what is happening in the particular category. So a communication element that is created from the experience of the consumer insights. So we'll need to pick on those insights. So when you're looking at a particular product category, what is it that people are finding is lacking in that particular product category that this particular need the brand can fulfill? Yeah. So I think it's important to understand that insight. And that's where messaging can start coming, which will become a differentiator. Few parameters, 4 key functions of the message should be, it should inform, convince, associate, and engage. Yeah. So obviously inform the consumer about its product, convince them, and build an association, and over a period of time, create a strong engagement. As I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on the messaging part of it. I'm going to focus more on the contact part of it. Yeah. What determines the success of the contact? Yeah. How it connects with the audience is the key that we're talking about when you're talking about contact. And here, I would say two aspects that we need to understand, which could be very, very important for us to understand when you're looking at contact. Effectiveness and efficiency. If it's an open forum, I would have had a discussion with you all to understand. Do you all know the difference between effectiveness and efficiency? Yeah. If anyone wants to answer that, or should I just move on? Okay, I'll put it this way. So effectiveness is, whether a particular task has been done or not. Yeah. So it's like 1 and 0. So if you can't say that my effectiveness is 0.5. It is either 0 or 1. Either it's done or not done. You can't say I did it 70%, I did it 50%. That's not effectiveness. Effectiveness is done or not. Efficiency is in what manner you did it, how smartly you did it, how fast you did it in terms of time, or it could be in terms of cost. Just to give an example, if we're traveling to a particular place, suppose we're traveling from Chennai to, say, Bangalore. And the moment you travel from Chennai to Bangalore, you reach Bangalore, as far as that particular travel is concerned, it's effective. You reach your destination. Now, efficiency element would be whether you take a train, you take your own vehicle, you will come by flight, or you use any other method, which is where cost and the time factor come into play. So efficiency would be about how do you make that more efficient. So quite often our objective would be that I would want so many million users sort of signing up for a particular product of ours. We develop an app and say that I would want so many downloads, about 10,000 downloads. So the moment I achieve 10,000 downloads, the communication or the objective is effectively achieved. Now, which is the method in which you do it? Are there more smarter methods to do it? Are there more efficient methods to do it? Is where efficiency comes into play. Yeah. So I hope you understood this aspect, that effectiveness is all about achieving an end goal or not. Efficiency is about how do you achieve it with the given parameters. So what is communication planning? It is the art and science of making connection with the target audience in the most effective and efficient manner. Yeah, so I've just taken that particular point so that you understand. So when you're looking at a communication planning, we're taking these aspects and making it more effective and efficient. So which are the cornerstones of a communication planning? And there's something which I think almost every communication planning element document we should have. Who to communicate? So whom are we talking with? So which typically we use the word, we always say that who's the target audience. So who to communicate? Where to communicate? When to communicate? And how to communicate? So these are the cornerstones on which we will build this strategic document. So who to communicate? It's typically audience. Where? Which market? It could be multiple markets. It could be, if you could look at geographically, you could look at it. You could look at psychographically. So there are multiple ways to look at it. Yeah. When to communicate? Yeah. Which is the right time for us to communicate so that we are able to trigger the right response. And how to communicate. Yeah. So this is what typically a document should consist of. Oh, sorry. Now the challenge with us is that there are plenty of media options. So how do you sort of identify that? And this is something which again we need to understand, that today we are constantly talking about being the digital era, and a lot of us are somewhere along being very indifferent to the role and relevance of other media. But that's not true. While digital media has certainly come up quite well in the last few years, the role and relevance of other media continues to still there. So TV would have a particular role, print would have a particular role. I would say if you were to look at music apps would have a particular role, cinema would have a particular role. So every medium would have a particular role other than looking at a digital world. So what are the key questions to be answered? How do you plan in such a complex environment? So what role should each medium play? So it's very important to understand which is going to be a base core medium on which you will sort of build the entire plan. So you could have a primary medium, and there are a set of media which will play a secondary part. Yeah. Is there a role for online and offline media? Should public relations play a role in the communication mix? How about social media or brands website? Should sales promotion take a greater or lesser role? How about out of home? Now, quite a few of these questions, if you look at it, are standard questions, but also there are questions where an agency guy will say some of these things, and because I've worked in an agency, and that's the kind of thinking we used to happen. They say, as an agency person, why should I don't know about sales promotion, it's a client's decision, or I might not know what is happening below the line, it's not my decision. In reality, the world has changed, and that's where we need to also acknowledge these changes. Earlier, these were all in a way compartmentalized, but I think today the overlap is very, very significant. If you are doing a particular below the line activity, your above the line can in a way make that below the line more effective. Similarly, if there's an above line activity happening, below the line exercise can be used to make it more effective. So I think if you're able to understand this connect very well, then we look at it holistically. Otherwise, we are operating in silos. There is a client team which briefs the agency comes, does a particular creative presence and goes away, and the brand team there then creates its own understanding of that particular presentation, and it does its own activity based on its internal requirements. I think that has to also change as we go along. How do you bring one synergistic effect as far as this particular activity is concerned? So today's complex environment, it's not enough to just advertise, but need to be more proactive in this approach. And it sounds like a very, I would say, basic statement, but it's very important But quite often we tend to be reactive. But how often are we able to identify opportunity? How are we able to draw up a calendar and say the next 3 months, these are the kind of things that are big activities that are likely to happen, the big festivals likely to happen. And we again get caught up in, oh, if I'm working in online space, okay, Mother's Day will come, Father's Day will come, Friendship Day will come. So it becomes very cliched. So how are we looking at breaking these cliches is very important. Yeah. Should take cognizance of all consumer brand touchpoints regardless of their origin. Now, this is very important because we have to understand, literally map a consumer's day or a consumer's life for us to understand. And for this, one primary requirement, and again, I'm saying based on my own experience, is that I think it's very important for all people, especially working in agencies, to actually meet consumers. We quite often are sitting in a very, very removed scenario where we create plans for a brand whose brief we would have got, a client would have told about something, and based on their understanding, we are creating a plan. But how often do we interact and talk to these consumers? And that's when we are able to get these insights as to what do they do when they get up in the morning, how do they travel, how do they spend their day, what are the leisure activities, and these are all points which can give us, I would say, triggers for us to do not only a creative communication, also media communication. So unless we know the typical touch points of a consumer, we are not able to value add at all. We will end up, doing the same standard. I would put one ad in, say, a particular TV channel, the prominent newspaper, or I would put it in a particular, I would say, Instagram or Facebook. It becomes very, very standardized. So how do you create a differentiation? That differentiation comes only when you understand this. I'll share one example for you all for you to understand. So this is a particular example where we're looking at a energy drink. An AMP was looking to be more than just an energy drink. It wanted to present a high-level performance. So it wanted to demonstrate that it's a high-level performance drink. So what did it do? They created a particular a pedal, a cycle, which was connected to a particular lighting, where that moment you pedaled it, the generator produced electricity, which lit up the billboard in a prominent junction. So actually placed it in prominent junction, could be on a mall. So people actually came and pedaled and they started seeing it. So in reality, they realized that there is a particular power that can be generated, and they linked it to the amp. So they can say this is the amp test yourself kind of equipment. For the first time, consumers were just told what an energy weren't just told what an energy drink was. They actually experienced it. It is believed that it created huge buzz in the market and generated 20% increased trials. Now, so on the face of it, we might say, how can we say, how we do we know that the link in the drink and this? It's about selling a concept. It's about selling, associating with the concept. So all it is saying is that AMP was able to demonstrate through an experience. And the moment they're able to create these touch points where people are able to actually touch and feel a product, and then realize the virtues of the product, I think it stays in their mind for a longer period of time. And that's where media can play an immense role. So how do you get this in the entire maze sorted out is through what we call as the integrated media communication planning perspective. Yeah. And so what is this perspective? A perspective based on rapidly changing world of media. And what is the crux of this? So this is a very important aspect we must understand that, the success of this particular approach is dependent not on what the media does to the consumer, but what the consumer does to the media. So the approach is to go from the consumer perspective, the brand, and not brand with the consumer. So it's very important that quite often we will say that, I would put these ads in a particular medium, and this is a time that I have a budget. So I'll put it in a particular time band, which I find it very beneficial. I've done some research and then possibly start releasing it. We don't know whether the consumer is consuming it that particular way. That, as I said, I told you this example that people do record content and keep it. Similarly, I think there are instances where people are looking at, say, Insta or Facebook, and the way they consume. For instance, one audience may consume that particular Insta in a particular fashion. A particular age group would look at it for a lot of watching reels and shorts and whatnot. But there is another audience who would look at it from a different perspective. So again, depends on what product you're selling. If you suppose you're talking about a product which is aimed at a senior citizen, looking at a senior citizen home or projects like that. So just by saying I'll put it in Insta or Facebook, it doesn't work. But it is aimed at not to put them in is also a mistake. Do use them in the manner in which those people use it. Now, those are people who possibly end of the day would want to upload some photos of their about their trip, recent trip, or some meet with the friends. So their interaction would be limited, but at a particular point in time. How we are understanding the same medium is used and consumed differently by different people. It's very important to understand that before we put these messaging. So that's what we said, brand and consumer. It's not a one-way communication. That's something which we need to constantly bear in mind, that I will just put this ad and automatically expect customers to come. No. Today it's engagement. People do people do I would say QR scans, engage with the brand, try to understand what's happening in the brand, and then sort of engage with the brand. So the approach is to start working backwards from people and the response we just talked about. That is to consider how people in our target group use media rather than how each medium works on people. Very, very important. Please note this. It should logically fit into the scheme of things from the objective setting perspective. Again, I give the example about objective was to sell a particular senior citizen homes. You're looking at whether it matters or not. You're looking at energy drink, perspective is very different. You're looking at a high fashion product, accessories, it's very different. Yeah. There is no definite answer and no magic formula. That's something which we need to understand. Okay, we can't say that I have one particular formula for, I'm working on 5 clients. I can't use the same strategy and formula for every client. Every client's experience and requirements are very, very different. And the more we are able to get granular on that, understand that, is when we can make a difference. And that will lead us to strategic thinking. Strategic thinking is the necessary bridge between marketing objective and media tactics. Now, what is this? What do you mean by marketing objective? We are all very clear. What is media tactics? I'll just talk about it in a minute. Yeah. Now, these strategies could be a defensive strategy where some new competitors coming in trying to take market share away from our brands. We're trying to protect it. It could be a defensive approach, or we would want to grab market share from someone. We could be an aggressive approach. So our strategy consensus can be persuasively argue for any particular set of executions or set of tactics over another. Now, this is very important again. Quite often we say strategy, okay, I prepared one document and that's what it is. Everyone has to buy it. No, it never happens that way. A strategy is also about looking at optional. Let's look at strategy 1, 2, 3. Look at options. If strategy 1, this is the kind of route we take. This is the kind of set of actions and tactics that we are going to use it. Option 2 strategy, this is what the strategy is, and this is what the the tactics are. And strategy 3. What is common in all the 3 strategies? The objective. The objective doesn't change. I can't say, though, this strategy, the objective will be this. No, the brand objective is only one. Marketing objective is common. The objective is common, but we will have multiple ways to reach that particular objective. And we will also have rationale and arguments as to why one particular set is better than the other. So what happens is this foolproof. When you are thought through, it's not like, you're caught up with your own idea, very excited with your own idea and say, yeah, I thought about a very brilliant idea, so this is a route. No, it never happens like that. The reality is there are so many, I would say, changing factors, improbables, which are there in the marketplace, which we have no control over. So we need to have options. So your strategy 1, 2, and 3, all towards the same objective, is what we need to put together. And it's very important to understand this, because unless we document this, then we'll at any point in time not be able to justify why we took a particular route, and not revisit it later on, say that, did our strategy succeed or not? How will you know? Unless it's documented and clearly stated, this is the approach that we follow. Strategy decisions demand full engagement of the mind and its imagination. Yeah, I think one of the things that quite often media people think that all the creativity is only with the creative department. No, one of the most creative minds are in the media department. Yeah, so it's very important to understand how would you use that creativity and imagination to the full extent. So media strategy is often confused with media tactics. Now, media strategy is different from tactics. As I said, strategy is your approach note, is a document. Tactics is the actual execution. So I'll just give an example for you to understand. Media strategy is a broad strategy of using media, whereas tactics are the specific media vehicles. For example, a media objective may be to reach 80% of women who are homemakers. Strategy could be use TV plus magazine plus social media. So you could have that kind of strategy. The tactics would be to look at specific vehicles, like I would be using Super Singer or what a set of, and just put some examples here. You might look at some Anand Vigadan or Instagram, or you look at some supplements in Tamil newspaper or English newspaper. So you would go specifics as far as tactics are concerned. But we look at strategy, we look at what is the overall document. What is it that we're looking at? What is it that we aim to achieve through this? Just to illustrate it from an example point of view, objective would be to go from Bangalore to Chennai, whether you're taking a particular flight or you're taking a road. As I said, that is a media tactic. So I'm coming to the conclusion of my presentation. And who do you think who's best equipped to do this exercise? So I just want to leave you all with a thought, so that I would want you all to I want to provoke your minds to sort of approach this in a particular fashion. So who is best suited to do this particular strategic planning? A smart professional. So it's an acronym. So what does SMART stand for? S is savvy or sharp. As I said, unless one moves out of the marketplace, reads, understands, be proactive, it's not about being reactive. And it's not about, taking some secondary information, what somebody says that this is my client. You going out and doing your own homework. That's where a savvy, sharp consumer is. Media literate and knowledgeable. And when I'm saying media literate and knowledgeable, most of us are today rushing to do digital courses or wanting to do be expert in digital. Yes, certainly. It is possibly the flavor of the time. But I think what's important is also understand the role and relevance of other media. Even now today, role and relevance of print, TV, radio, and possibly other music apps, cinema, outdoor, all these media. So we need to be understanding what do these media do. You can't say that I am an expert only in digital space. I don't care what happens elsewhere. No, each medium has a role to play, and what do they bring onto the table? Unless we understand if something they are bringing onto the table much stronger than what a particular medium is, as neutral custodians, we should say, yes, let us go with something which is best brought out by print or TV. Aligned to brand needs. I can't stress more on this point. I've talked enough on this. Aligned to brand needs is very, very essential. Responsive. Yeah. Today's day and era, people want responses like that. Even 24 hours look very long these days. And time conscious. Everything is time based. So a particular plan that is effective, we say, okay, I'm putting a plan together. Today we are on April 19th. It runs up to say mid-May. The same plan is going to be different by the time we move to the next season. So the time consciousness, time element is very, very important. What time period are we committing? What time period are we putting these objectives for? The objectives can't be an open-ended set of objectives. They have to be time-based. They have to be with a cap on them. So a smart individual, if you have these qualities, I think you are in the making of a great strategic planner. So what's the process? If objective is what, where we say should lead to action, the strategy is how, explains how to achieve it, and media tactics are details which will sort of lay them out, like I talked about. The strategy is in place. The final elements of how we're looking at it are the media tactics. TV, dailies, magazine, radio, digital, out of home. Yeah. So I hope I have been able to communicate well on the increased relevance of strategic planning. So in conclusion, I would like to leave one thought with you all before I end my presentation. And that is a quote by Lee Bolman. And he says, a vision without a strategy remains an illusion. I thought it's a very powerful line that all of us need to think about, that we can have multiple visions, but unless it is strategic based, it will remain as an illusion. Thank you, friends, for your time and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Subbu. I think that was I don't think this time was enough for all the insights I think we should have had a longer session, but thank you so much for imparting a power pack session in such a short time. I took a lot of learnings out of this, and I hope so have the participants. We will open it up for the Q&A session at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We've got two questions as of now. For the rest of you, please feel free to, raise your hand or just come on camera. It's a casual session. Subbu's here to answer your questions for the next 10 minutes, and we should wrap up from there. So let me just open the
Okay, I'll need some help to read out.
Yeah, I'm just trying to read the.
Yeah.
Trying to get that for you. Somehow I'm unable to get into it. 1 second.
I did see the question.
Yeah, so... I got it. So first question is coming in from Purani.
Okay.
So the question goes, social media influencers, doctors, and YouTubers criticize food and beverage brands and cosmetic brands. Their messages create awareness, but create panic and fear about consuming these brands. From an advertiser's POV, how can they win back the trust of consumers?
I think, to bracket as something as good or bad, in my opinion, I mean, it is something which has happened over the years in advertising that, we can't in blanket say that something is good or bad. And in today's era, I would say the more consumer awareness is created about the elements that we're talking about, So when you're talking food and beverages, yes, there are concerns because there are, I would say, enough and more examples of people who are misusing that particular trust that people have in brands also. But it's more important for brands to be more upfront and forthright in what would be the differentiators to communicate that, So to that extent, I would say whenever there is a challenge, it is actually an advantage for a very core and strong brand. And I have interacted with brands which where people have had this challenges being raised. I've also worked with food and beverage brand in the past. And whenever people are asked these questions, what happens is we see it as an opportunity because that's when you can see the men from the boys, You can actually start seeing the ones who are the real true custodians of the principle they're talking about. Yes, there is a backlash. There is I would say there's a fatigue or there's a particular, I would say, a little bit of a concern with that particular category. But that's when, as a strong brand, if you stay put with your core, I would say, communication and statements, I think you can win back the customers. And that's when the customer realizes that, like, for instance, if you look at gold itself, all of us are looking at categories where there's a constant talk about, whether you're looking at pure gold or gold which is sort of adulterated. And at the end of the day, in the shakeout, what happens is the real powerful brands are able to survive that much better purely because they're able to stay put to their true, true values and I would say systems that they have introduced to make sure that what they offer to customers is of the best quality. So similarly, brands which are in the food and beverage category, yes, there is a backlash, there is a challenge, there is a, I would say, lack of trust that they will have to encounter. It is a storm that they will have to weather. But the stronger ones will definitely weather with a consistent piece of communication that they will be able to demonstrate that they are different from the rest.
Thank you, Subbu.
Yeah.
The next question comes from Uma, which is, how are Spons and Toms placed in strategic media planning?
Sorry, what is that?
How are Spons, S-P-O-N-S, and Toms placed in strategic media planning?
Sorry, I'm not able to understand what is Spons and Toms.
Spons is the word used for spontaneous, I mean, in the terms of marketing terminologies.
Okay.
Spontaneous reach and
top of mind. And top of mind.
Yes, top of mind. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So what's the question? Now that I understood what Spons and Toms are.
So how are these 2 points kept in check in strategic media planning?
I think Spons and Toms are the net result of what exercise you do. Say, what is Spons? Spontaneous recall of a particular product or a top of mind recall are a function of what is it that what is the hook that you have created in the consumer's mind? So if you look at any category, our brand or our product will be named top of mind if we are able to create that niche space in that consumer's mind. So I would say spawns and tawns are a throwback from the consumer in a research. But the reality is that what have we done to earn that particular slot is something which the brand has to understand and do. And most brands would try to do that so that, the moment I talk about ice creams, which is the first brand I would think about, the moment I talk about mobiles, which is the first brand I would like to come. So spontaneous recall is something which is a playback consumer playback. But for the consumer to play back what you want, what is the hook that you are creating? What is the differentiator that we are building? So if the differentiator is strong enough, then I think the playback will come very, very strongly. For instance, I do consult for RmKV Silks. So RmKV's differentiator it's an innovative silk brand. And every time we do research, one of the moment you say innovation silk brand, the customer spontaneously say RmKV. Now, so to that extent, I would say the spawns is the playback that comes from the customer based on what is the input or what is the communication that has been given, that the brand has given to the consumer. Yeah, to that extent, yes, that's how it will play out.
Right. Thank you for that, Subbu. There's one question from Senthil. Says, should strategy be directly proportional to the brand marketing budgets or any other way?
This is a good question, Senthil. But I think, see, most of us get caught on this, quagmire of, budgets, this, that, and all. I would say yes. See, budget is never sufficient. If you ask any brand and any custodian, they'll say, I would want endless tons of money. But flip side is, if you look at brands, and I have worked with some wonderful Indian entrepreneur clients over my 30 years of working in advertising agency, and all of them had, I would say, shoestring budgets. So what is important is what do you do with that particular budget? So it's nothing to do with, it's directly proportional. I would say strategy is a function of, what is the end objective you're trying to achieve. So if you're looking at the end objective, strategy is just one route you're going to take. Now that route depends on obviously your budget, but I would say that doesn't make that route any weaker, So for instance, if you're flying, it will only, as I said, it's only a question of whether it's effective or not, or efficient or not. For instance, if you don't have enough and more funds, you can't possibly fly down to Bangalore from Chennai. You would possibly take a train or a bus, But that doesn't mean that your end objective is compromised. It might be a little more challenging route, but obviously there are means to achieve your objective even with shoestring budgets. And I've done that for multiple clients. And I'm saying we as a team have done that for multiple clients. It's been fascinating. In fact, the more fascinating is when you've got limited budgets. So I would say that, in a way, to answer your question, I don't think that directly proportional element is something which I would say is something we should keep in mind. Yeah, obviously, more funds is something which we can always desire for. But that doesn't mean we need to compromise on strategy. Because everything is known to us right at the beginning. We know the objective, we know the budget available. Now, within this particular objective is to be met. This is a budget available. Now, which is the best strategic route that takes us there is something which we can work out. Need not compromise on strategy at all.
Great. I have a question, which is, how does an aspiring planner or a planner who's just starting out stay clear away from being biased on their own decision, right? Because that's something that a planner needs to be, have that integrity about themselves, right? And when you're young and growing, how do you be clear from being biased to your own strategic thought versus what actually is needed?
Not an easy answer. I think it's true for us, or to all professions happening around us. You can see it on news channels also today. How many opinions are neutral in any aspect. So at that extent, personal biases do creep in even in a planning process. But what's important is that, as I said, if you're true to the brand requirement, I think that's where understanding and soaking into the brand and what its objectives are, what its requirements are, becomes very, very essential. I would say that I have seen that we have recommended contrasting strategies to two brands which are requirements are very different. So, which is not that you take a template and sort of put it in place. yes, you will have a leaning towards something, but what's more important is what is it that the kind of core requirement of that particular brand is. And mind you, this is something which you must also be very, very wary of, that moment you are able to, you bring in your personal biases, what happens is you are bringing in a personal equity at stake.
Correct.
The moment you are saying that this is what the brand requirement is, I'm staying true to the brand requirement, in a way you are actually creating a little bit of a I would say safety net around you, because you're saying that this is a brand requirement, that's why I'm staying true to it. The moment you're sticking your neck out and say, no, but I think that is what it might say, but this is what I believe we should do, that it is a little challenging. So if you're willing to take that risk, then it's I would say something that people should do. But as far as possible, if you can stay true to the brand understanding and brand requirement, I think we should be able to stay away from these biases.
So always go back to the brand brief. Always do be that checklist is important, right? That going base.
Suraj, what's important is that I think quite often, as I said, this is where I think you have to win this battle against yourself. When you say, quite often what happens is that let's say take a creative person. When you come with a creative idea, the first thing that is most people fall in love with their own idea. So I've seen creative people, they say, no. So the moment your rigidity creeps in, it's likely to be strategically unsound. Purely because, it could be a great idea. I'm not questioning that, but I'm saying that you lose that that opportunity to put it to test. It is better that you put it to test by challenging your own idea, because what happens is, if the idea were to then fail, it would still fail in the drawing room, in the boardroom. It will not fail in the marketplace. Whereas if you were resisting the idea of testing it out and resisting the idea of being exploring other options, then in a way what happens is you're, as I said, putting your own equity at stake and risking your own reputation in the marketplace. So I think something similar would happen, that if we were have the option of looking at options and then try and say that, I think this is what normally I would say, but this time around I would like to believe this. I think it's important to swallow some of your own pride and go to that particular route. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you so much, Subbu. Thank you for clarifying that. And I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking out the time.
Sorry, I think I overshot the time allotted, I think.
We're okay. I think we've got most of the participants waiting here and listening to this, so it's a clear indication on how interesting it was. Thank you once again, and I'd like to hand over it to Uma, who will give the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suraj. So, thanks, Subbu. You just took us through the journey of strategic planning. It started with the brand scenarios, brands vying for consumer attention in the world of tech, in the era of convergence age, and how the power shift has taken place to consumer and their loyalty acting as an influencing factor to drive more consumers. And you also took us through how the economy has evolved from a sharing economy, a now economy, and to an omni-channel economy, and the content marketing and how the social CRM plays a major role. And further on to evolving media scenario from TV, how it is shifting to gadgets, and how even the traditional media like newspaper is shifting towards digital and making it as a digital world kind of approach, which is needed to survive in today's complex world of media conditions. And you also took us through brand challenges and how to overcome these challenges and fundamental elements of brand communication with a brief on effectiveness and efficiency and aspects involving communication planning in a complex environment and approach to choose media and all this in a very elaborate manner. And Ad Club is known for its most of the ad clubs are known for its inclination towards creative community, and as a strategic approach, Madras Ad Club is trying to do the balancing act on creative media as well as digital. So if you look at the past InsightView, we have been trying to balance this out with bringing in talents or experts from the world across to ensure that our members and the community and the industry is loaded with plenty of takeaways with an array of diversified inputs in terms of the industry and the knowledge. So I hope today also our members and the community people had a lot of takeaway from this session. And I thank Mr. Subbu wholeheartedly for your time and taking your efforts to bring in this wonderful knowledge session. And as such, I also take opportunity to thank our AdLab team and the digital media team from the Deep Science and IIT, and myself from Media News for You for promoting the reach, and so many other people behind the scenes also who also took efforts to amplify the reach of this session. And looking forward to present another interesting session in a fortnight's time. Thank you, Subbu, once again, and thank you all for being part of this session. And hope to see you soon with another interesting, talent or experts in the future InsightView series. Signing off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please vote till we have time. Please go and vote if at all anyone is left out. I have casted mine. Yeah, you can see this. Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Uma.
you.
Thank you, Subbu. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.